During this film, you will need to take down readings from the screen. This is heather, Calluna vulgaris, growing on a stretch of high Pennine moorland. We're going to collect samples of heather from this moor, which we've chosen because the heather here is subject to management. This is a grouse shooting area. There are the shooting butts, which are used by sportsmen during the shooting season. You'll see shortly what we mean by managed heather and why it's important for our experiment. The track, cutting across the moor, gives us a chance to look at the soil profile. Heather grows in the surface layer of the soil, which is mostly peat here. It thrives in acid conditions, and peat is acid, as shown by a soil test. pH around 4 or 4.5. That's a sheep track. Sheep can destroy the heather by grazing, which is then replaced by grasses. You can see a grass in the foreground. This exclosure, a fenced area, keeps sheep out, and you can see the effect this has. The heather's very much taller inside than outside where sheep can graze. Few sheep are found in the area selected for study. They're mainly down in the valley, away from most of the heather. From what we've said, it's obvious that good grouse management is incompatible with sheep grazing. For successful grouse rearing, a balanced mixture of tall and short heather is needed. The tall heather provides cover for the breeding birds and chicks, whilst the short heather provides the food. Old rank heather is of little use for either. So the moor's managed. Different areas are burnt off in certain years, so that there are always large areas of heather of optimum age and height available for the game birds. The gamekeeper is responsible for this proper upkeep of the heather. The point for us is that we can find here stands of heather of different ages. These can be sampled and the growth rate of heather determined. Growth rate is an important measure of the performance of heather and its net primary production. This patch was burnt about a year ago, and regeneration is already well advanced. Here's a patch of young seedlings. On this moor, regeneration's mainly from seed. If we dig some out, you can see that this is a seedling with its own roots developing. Let's look at a stand of older heather. You can get an idea of its age by examining a plant. The fresh green pliable part at the top is this year's growth, much favoured by grouse as food. This is last year's growth, called a long shoot, last year's long shoot. There's a long shoot for each year's growth, and these are the short shoots. Lower down in the shade of the canopy, the plant becomes woody. We're going to take samples from stands of different ages. The procedure is this. Suppose the differently shaded areas in the diagram represent areas burnt in different years, so that each now supports heather of a certain age. We construct a 100-metre square on one of the patches. These are the posts we put in, 10 metres apart, forming one side of the square and the post for the adjacent side. The lines of posts form coordinates. We have to take 10 half-metre square quadrats at random from within the large square. To do this, we use a table giving sets of random coordinates, picking out, say, every 7th pair of numbers, then pacing out the coordinates to find where to place the quadrat. This way, we're sure that we take random samples. This is a 9-year-old stand. All the heather is cut away from within the quadrat. Then it's bagged, ready to be taken back to the laboratory. We take 10 separate samples from this stand. We then repeat the process on a patch of heather of different age, 10 random samples again. This is 20 years old. Every scrap of heather is removed from within the quadrat. Note the layer of litter which is accumulated on the surface of the soil. Each sample must be carefully bagged and labelled. This gives us many sets of samples of Calluna vulgaris, each set taken from a stand of heather in which all the plants are of a similar age. By taking many samples, we can be sure of achieving statistically valid results in the laboratory. In the laboratory, we can check accurately the age of every sample or determine the age if the heather management records were incomplete. In this kind of study, it is generally necessary to ascertain the date of burning empirically. The cut end of a sample plant is wetted with alcohol. Then, using a very sharp razor, thin slices are cut from the stem. They are dropped into alcohol. A section's picked out, then it's treated with a little fluoroglucinol solution. After a short time, the section's transferred to a second dish. Now, dilute hydrochloric acid is added. The section becomes stained. A red colour develops. We examine the stained section under the microscope. The rings are annual rings, like those seen in the sawn-off trunk of a tree. Count them, and we get the age of the specimen. Here are two sections from plants of different ages, side by side. We also measure accurately the diameters of the woody stems of the samples we've examined in this way. The diameters are measured using vernier calipers. This is done so that a calibration curve of age against diameter can be drawn. In more extensive studies, it is often more convenient to estimate age from stem diameter rather than by laboriously determining the age of all samples by ring counts. This is particularly true in more heterogeneous stands of heather, where plants of all ages are found growing together. Knowing the age of every sample, we then wrap each sample in metal foil. Then we dry it in an oven at 110 degrees centigrade until a constant weight is achieved, showing that all the moisture has been driven off. The samples come out dry and brittle, like this. Each must now be weighed. Get ready to take down the weight of each of these 10 samples of 20-year-old heather taken from the Pennine Moor. Each has been thoroughly oven-dried. Sample number 1. The weight's expressed in grams. You must write it down. Each weight must be recorded. Sample number 2. Three. Four. Sample 5. Six. Seven. Sample 8. Sample number 9. And finally, sample number 10 from the 20-year-old stand of heather. Using these readings and the notes and further data in the experiment booklet, you can now calculate the yearly primary production of the Pennine heather and consider what such experiments tell us about some of the factors affecting the growth of the plant.